Hi, everybody. There he is. Warren Buffett has just come out, and we're going to get our moment to talk to him. Warren, good to see you.
It's good to see you.
We were on the floor all day long, watching people shop. Do you have any early numbers?
Yeah, 16,200 people were here between noon and 5 o'clock yesterday. And that broke the record by a couple thousand.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, but what about the sales numbers?
I only got sales for one company, and I want to. Well, they were up quite a bit, but I want them to sell. We'll count the money later.
But the diamonds at Borsheim that were signed by you,
yeah.
Any sales of those?
I don't know the answer to that, but I would hope so. Just so we didn't sell them all to my family or something.
Sounds so romantic, a diamond with your name on it.
I'll buy something before the weekend's over.
You will?
Probably. Yeah.
For yourself?
No. Not for myself.
You'll actually buy something?
At Borsheim's?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Like a diamond?
Well, I'll buy it as a. I've bought things there before for people that have helped me out. I've got two people in mind.
People rumor that Bill Gates chose his ring from Borsheim.
He got his ring. Yeah, it was an Easter Sunday in 1993.
Okay.
And he surprised his wife. They got on the plane in Palm Springs, and she thought they were flying to Seattle. And he kept her occupied playing some games. And he'd asked the pilot when they got on what the weather was like in Seattle and all that. And they flew to Omaha instead. And for Bill and Melinda, we opened the store on Easter Sunday. And I told them that when I bought my wife's ring, when I got married, when I was 21, I'd put 6% of my net worth in the ring because I was very much in love. And I said, I don't know how much in love you are, but 6% is sort of the yardstick. And I kept reminding him of that as we went out to Borsheim's, and he did her justice.
Well, maybe they're going to have an anniversary ring.
I think they ought to have weekly anniversaries, Bill and Melinda. I mean, yeah, we'll open the store for them anytime.
Warren, you've got hours and hours ahead of you today. What was your breakfast fuel this morning?
Oh, I got a few swigs of cherry Coke before I left, yeah.
That's it.
That's all you need.
No Beyond Meat. That just went public. The Impossible Burger at Burger King. Have you tried any of that?
I don't try anything that hasn't been around for 100 years. No, I let them get seasoned before I...
Well, the nation's tastes are changing, and we saw that with Kraft Heinz when it had to issue a $15.4 billion write-down in the fourth quarter, and that certainly couldn't have made you happy that they didn't understand the changing tastes. How and when did you hear about that?
It really wasn't so much changing. If you look at unit sales for the top 10 products of Kraft Heinz, they're quite steady. I mean, basically, and that's true throughout the food industry. Now, with a population growing 1% a year, the American public's going to eat 1% more food, and some of them, sure, are experimenting with other things. But if you look at candy bars, Snickers has been number one for 40 years. It'll probably stay that way.
You couldn't have been happy when you heard. How did you hear about the fact that there would be such a massive write-down?
Well, I don't remember exactly when I heard, but the write-down is of intangibles. I mean, it isn't like money disappears or anything of the sort. It's because we paid, in my view, we paid too much for Kraft. We didn't pay too much for Heinz, but we paid too much for Kraft. So you write it down. It doesn't change whether anybody uses ketchup. They don't care about the write-down. And there's many units selling Heinz ketchup or Philadelphia cream cheese or whatever it may be around the world. And so it's... but we paid a lot. We paid too much. You can always pay too much for anything.
Well, did you know you were paying too much at the time? I mean,
I knew I was paying too much. I'm not known for buying things where I know I'm paying too much. No.
Well, was it the lack of due diligence, or you've got to tell us?
No, you just make the power of the retailer versus. There's always a struggle between the retailer and the brand, and that struggle goes on in different ways in different countries. Private label's always been way bigger in the UK, for example, than the United States. If you look at soft drinks, there are places where private label is fairly strong, but usually it isn't. Very hard to, something like beer. You have craft beers, but you don't have private label beers that take over. And Walmart started Sam's Cola in 1991, and you can't displace Coke. But there are some things that are, if you get canned corn, it may have somebody's name on it, and there are names that would resonate with you, but they don't cause you to pay 25% more for that corn in that can. It's really interesting where brands make a huge difference and don't. I mean, in milk, you don't. If you go into a store and you don't happen to see your favorite milk, you don't go and get it someplace else. But if they don't have Coca-Cola and you want Coca-Cola, you'll go someplace else.
So people talking about Warren Buffett is the biggest brand for Berkshire, and investor might worry if you're not going to be the CEO. And what are the brands of Berkshire going to last?
No.
What's your comments?
Berkshire is the brand. It's a culture at Berkshire, and it exists with the managers. It exists with the directors. It exists with the shareholders. I mean, we've got a group of shareholders that has distinguishing characteristics from virtually any company that I know of in the world, and so it's a reinforcing culture, and it will continue. It's stronger now than ever, and they can just get one of these cardboard cutouts of me and stick it up. I'll have done my share.
Hey, Warren, just back to the brands at Kraft Heinz. I mean, you think about brands and the growth they get, and sure, the population's only growing 1%, but then if you look at Procter & Gamble, they were able to get 5, 6, 7% organic growth for the last several quarters by doing innovation, by doing things differently. What are they doing differently?
Yeah, well, but Procter & Gamble was stuck for a while, and one of their strongest brands, and which I thought could not be attacked, was Gillette, and along came some other unmentionables, and they lost share. And I would have thought that was just about impossible. For one thing, men are the primary customers, and men don't change. I mean, and the cavalcade of sports. When I was a kid, Gillette was your friend when you watched or listened in those days to the Rose Bowl or the Joe Louis fight, Max Schmeling, or whoever it might be. And I thought men were very hard to change men's habits, and they changed. And so B&G struggled to some extent, but B&G has been reinvigorated, obviously.
It's very hard to.
No, not that early. No.
Have we already addressed Amazon?
Just because I usually get to work at noon. No.
Good morning and congratulations.
Thank you.
On today. Tell me why Amazon and why now, finally.
Well, it isn't my Amazon, so you'd have to ask somebody else at our office, and they don't talk. So.
But you've called what Jeff Bezos has built a miracle.
Absolute miracles. It's one of the great men. Maybe the greatest before he gets all through.
Really?
Greatest managerial. Yeah, I mean, to start with, books of all things, and the internet was available to anyone. The books were available to anyone. He did not own the rights to the books, and he just combined three big elements that cost people fortunes to develop. I mean, the internet itself, the payments industry, where he latched onto something that had been developed over 40 or 50 years, and then delivery. And he figured out the best way to combine those three elements, which are available to all of us. But he drove across country and went to Seattle, and it all went from there. I'm sure he didn't dream it all at the beginning, but he kept looking at what was coming in and saw what was possible, and he's unbelievable.
But Warren, so is Bill Gates, and you never bought Microsoft stock.
That's right.
And yet
I have a history of blowing it, don't I?
Good possibly. But it wasn't your deal, obviously. That's what you said about buying Amazon. But as we looked, 80 price to earnings ratio, if it were something that you were looking at, you would say, forget it?
No, I would have said stupid about me, because it really, now that doesn't happen very often. And to distinguish early on the Jeff Bezos from thousands of other people who may even have greater resources going on, and bear in mind, books, and you're ordering from somebody you've never heard of. And everybody likes to go into bookstores and browse around and look, and maybe get ideas from what's on the shelves. And who in the world is going to, come some unknown company and see how maybe not even exist?
Is Amazon taking away from any of your brick and mortar companies?
Sure.
Which ones?
Practically all of them. No, I mean, they will look at everything. And they have a tremendous customer base, and overwhelmingly, people like them. And the delivery is really the key in a big way. I mean, I would have thought that would be very, very difficult to pull
So
off.
was Amazon Prime then the game changer for you when you said, because you've said I was an idiot for not investing in Amazon.
Right. And it's interesting with Amazon Prime, again, he's copied something. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with copying in the least either, but Costco did the same thing. A fellow named Saul Price, a lawyer, a very aged lawyer in Los Angeles, designed what was then the Price Club, became part of Costco, but he designed the Price Club with the idea of keeping away the customer he didn't want. Now, who don't you want in the supermarket? You don't want a whole bunch of people with 2 items in the basket that are keeping somebody with 50 items in the basket waiting. So we stuck in a membership fee. And what did that do? It drove the guy who wanted 1 pack of cigarettes or 1 quart to the 7-Eleven or whatever, and he got the big customer. And once you paid to be a member of Costco, now you felt you were out your $25 or $50. You felt, well, I spent the money. I should go there. You'd go there anyway, but it intensifies it. Amazon Prime did the same thing with Amazon, and they built, I think it's over 100 million people that now are paying them, I think, $125 or so, and those people buy more. In effect, they want to validate their own membership, and they can do it. And they want to, there's a big psychological element too, but you have to deliver. I mean, in the end, what you like about it's going to be there.
Right.
Immediately, you're going to save time, and they're going to have everything. I think there's one book that calls it the everything store. So
I'm just interested, just on that point, finally, what is it about Jeff Bezos, the man, that has made him and Amazon such a success? Fundamentally, you assess business leaders and CEOs all the time, and you invest in companies because of the leader. So what is it about Jeff Bezos?
Yeah, I wish I could give him a blood test or something so I could pick it out. But
you want to clone?
Maybe I'd have in fact, I'd want a transfusion, actually. But there is something about it. Jeff came up to me in 1998, or maybe 9. I was giving a talk at Sun Valley. And I talked about how in the talk, there had been 2,000 people become auto manufacturers in the United States, and there were 3 left at that time. And then I gave the names of all the ones that I had 60 pages. And after that talk, Jeff came up and he said, I want those 60 pages. I want to show them to my troops and just show, that this is a tough game we're in. And, but nobody knew about it, anything of the sort. I don't know how to give a precise test. I would not know how, if you gave me the 100 top graduates of the Stanford or Harvard Business School, I wouldn't know how to pick out the 3 or 4 that were going to be the ones that turned out to be the Babe Ruths of their day. If you show me somebody that's run a business for 20 years and been knocking it out of the park, I can figure that one out.
Warren, cash pile. Warren, I just want to talk about your cash pile. Yesterday you told us around $112 billion.
Women always want to talk to me about our cash pile.
Well, the investors really want to know, are you going to use that to finally pay out a dividend? They would love to hear that.
Well, they know already, actually, that we're not.
No way.
Well, I won't say no way, for all time or anything, but no, we'll find things to do with the money. We've had lots of funds on hand, lots of time. We had more relative to our size, actually, in 2007 and 8, or the same amount, certainly, maybe more than we have now.
How about a share buyback?
Well, we bought some shares back.
I know that, but at what level do you and Charlie Munger think is a discount to the shares where you would jump in and buy?
Well, you can tell that by looking at our past quarter and seeing at what price we bought and what price we didn't buy. But that's a moving target, and it depends on other opportunities. All life is a choice on what you do with the money.
Mr. Buffett, are
Yeah.
you going to buy more Amazon in the future?
I haven't bought any. There's been an individual at our office that's bought some, and I don't know whether he will buy more or not.
Mr. Buffett, please, can you talk about Boeing?
Cash you would suggest an ordinary person to have in such a market condition?
Well, all my life, until I was about maybe 65 or 70, I never had any cash.
Not in your pocket.
I would get very unhappy when I had cash. Yeah, I think they called it rhinophobia or something, fear of cash.
Mr. Buffett, can you talk about the Boeing crisis? What do you think about it? I mean, you like aviation, obviously.
I think when you run a very, very, very large corporation, it's my nightmare. We've got 390,000 people. We make a lot of intricate parts in some parts of the business. We interact with millions of people. And I know everything is going to be perfect now. The record of the aircraft industry is extraordinarily good. Airplanes are so safe by and large, but occasionally something is going to happen. You know, we had it happen in the space. Remember the O-rings? It's hard to put something with millions of pieces together and have everything work perfectly. But airplanes are so safe that and it's unbelievable compared to 50 years ago. And the autos have become incredibly more safe than they were. In the mid-1930s, there were 16 deaths per 100 million miles. Now there's 1 death per 100 million miles. I mean, so things get better all around the world in manufacturing. But there'll always be something that can happen. Yeah.
If you were Dennis Muhlenberg, what would you do to try to reassure the public?
Well, you do everything you could, but in the end, what you need the FAA to certify it, and I would not hesitate 1 second to get on a 737 MAX the day that it's certified.
Now, I have to ask you about Uber, because you just talked about autos. Uber is about to go public. Does it surprise you? What do you think of Wall Street giving a $100 billion valuation to a company that lost $3 billion in the most recent quarter, isn't profitable, and doesn't have a foreseeable future where it is profitable? What does that say about Wall Street?
Yeah, I've talked about new issues to some extent, but I can't comment on Uber. Yeah, for one thing, we looked at it 18 months ago or so. It was private, but I wouldn't comment on any new issue.
In general, though, Wall Street giving these companies that are untested and not profitable huge valuations.
It would have been a good idea to buy Amazon.
Amazon wasn't profitable for a long time.
Back to the
Talk about
Amazon.
something
just
that's...
a thing. Excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Go
Just
ahead.
something that is not working for a lot of Americans is the healthcare system. You're trying to fix that, make it better with Jamie Dimon and with Jeff Bezos. What should America expect the three of you can do on healthcare?
That we'll do our best. It's a 3.3 or 3.4 trillion dollar industry. That's virtually as much as the federal government raises every year. It's huge. And every dollar has a constituency, just like every dollar of government spending has a constituency. And to try and change anything that large in a material way is a Herculean job. And the odds are always against succeeding at something like that, but there's nobody better positioned to try than the three of us. And we can spend 10 years and real money.
And how much money?
Real.
You've never put a dollar figure on it.
No, well, we don't know the dollar figure. No, we've never discussed that.
Really?
No, the three of us. And incidentally, we didn't even we probably have a legal arrangement now, but we just each paid for things that came along in our bailiwick and settled up afterwards. It's terrific to do business with people you trust. So
Any updates
and
on that?
with Jamie and Jeff, we're the right group to be working on it, but the problem is incredible. On the other hand, if the private sector doesn't make some improvements, it's going to be public.
Well, as we head into the 2020 election, many of the more left-leaning candidates are saying free health care, free college, universal basic income.
I'm for free cherry Coke.
But do you think this lean toward that is a positive or negative for the Democratic Party?
Well, that'll play out over the. There's certainly a number competing in that, but that's what you expect. I mean, each candidate of what we have 20 now they're going to try and figure out something to stand out from the pack. And I don't blame them. That's what I do if I was running. And if you're on the left, you will probably push further left. And if you're more toward the center, you'll hope everybody goes over there.
Do you think college should be free for everybody? I mean, is that even realistic?
Now that I'm running for president, I think everything should be free for everybody.
I mean, it is, the numbers do show that right now more Democrats view socialism favorably in America than capitalism as a product of, what American capitalism can bring. When you see those numbers, what do you think?
I think they'll change. And I don't think they're really talking about socialism.
What are they talking about?
They're probably talking about more government, but that, or certain things being made available.
Do you think more government is good for American business?
Well, that's a complicated question. I can't answer that in one sentence.
Mr. Buffett, you always suggest investors to buy indices. If we compare the Berkshire Hathaway's return in the past 10 years, it's actually lower than the S&P 500. What's your comment?
They should have followed my advice.
What's something the U.S. can do to be more competitive?
Well, the U.S. has been unbelievably competitive. Where you're standing right now, 250 years ago, there wasn't anything here. And when you flew here, you couldn't have flown here, but you flew over roads and colleges and medical institutions and farms that are producing 6 or 7 times what they produced before machinery. America, if you look at it, is a miracle of what the humans can do. And that game hasn't run out. It's just getting started. We haven't lost the secret sauce. I mean, just look at how you're living compared to 20 or 30 years ago. What I can do with a computer, I can write my annual report and have a question about a fact. I can find the answer in 5 seconds. Before I had to go down to the library and look it up, maybe mail away for information. It has done so much for me. And you can't measure it in the GDP very well, but I save hours and hours and hours and hours of research and looking things up just because I can find it so easily on a computer. Plus there's a million other things I can do. And you just look at the range of activities. Look at what you can watch just in terms of entertainment compared to 50 or 75 years ago. I used to squint at that little black and white thing, and I thought this is it. They can't invent anything to prove on this. And now I watch with an 85-inch TV, and I can see every hair on the person's head. It's incredible.
Warren, you'll be asked about succession once again. Anything new about your succession plan?
Well, I'm closer to them.
Okay, but why not bring up the vice chairs on stage this time around, Ajit Jain and Greg Abel? The shareholders are dying to hear from them.
Well, that's good. Maybe we'll charge for them. And if they're that eager. No, we've thought about 4 people on stage. I don't think it would work as well right now, but it's a good idea and it'll happen. I mean,
you have to share the peanut brittle and the Coke.
Yeah, it would different. If you take the 4 of us in terms of directing the questions and particularly from the audience, I don't think it would work as well. Although they will be right in the front row and undoubtedly will hand off more to both Greg and Ajit if they pertain to their
Let me ask
operations.
you just one thing about the U.S. economy, because we're here in Omaha. I'm from Minnesota, as you know.
I know that.
The jobs numbers were great. The top-line GDP number is great, but it's not reflective of the pain of farmers across America. Some of the ag sector, I've talked to dairy farmers. It's a non-farm payroll. I'm just wondering, how are you concerned about the plight of farmers in the Midwest right now?
Well, it's prices. I mean that. And if you look at the price of the New York Times 100 plus years ago, or the Wall Street Journal, there was times it was a penny. And now what is it? If you look at the price of all kinds of things, but you look at corn or wheat, they may be 3 times the price or something of the sort. Maybe not even that much. So the very abundance creates this huge supply, and there's no question the farmers are hurting compared to a lot of other industries. Now, they've done well sometimes when general business isn't that good, but farming is a tough business. Yeah. On the other hand, we are now producing everything this country needs using 2% of our labor force. And if you go back a couple hundred years, it was 80%. So just think of how much more productive those farms have become.
How about Chinese economy? How do you think the Chinese economy?
Well, I don't. I have trouble figuring out what the American economy is doing sometimes, but and I don't worry too much about that. China's going to do very, very well over time. America's going to do very, very well.
Do you see any buying opportunity in China or Asia right now?
My partner Charlie does. Yeah, you got to interview him.
Warren, in 2013, we asked you and Charlie Munger what you thought of Bitcoin, and Charlie said it was rat poison.
No.
Last year, after it collapsed, you said it was rat poison squared. Now that it's stabilized and coming slightly back, how would you characterize Bitcoin?
Well, I don't know whether you own any Bitcoin, but if there's anybody here that owns a Bitcoin that's done anything except stand there and account, I mean, it doesn't reproduce, you know, it doesn't speak to you, it doesn't do anything. It just it's like a seashell or something, and that is not an investment to me. I mean, it's a gambling device, and people have created a zillion of them naturally. There have been a lot of frauds connected with it, but there's been disappearances, and so there's been a lot lost on it. The Bitcoins haven't produced anything.
But if you bought them low and then you sold them at a couple of thousand, they would arguably have done something.
Yeah, well,
is it still rat poison?
Well, I'll tear off a button here, and we'll call this. We'll have this as a little token, and I'll offer it to you. And I'm going to tout it today in the meeting. So I'll offer it to you for $1,000, and I'll see if I can't get the price to $2,000 by the end of the day. And if I do, you'll make a lot of money. But the button has one use, and it's a very limited use, and it sells for about what it's worth. Bitcoin, it's a very interesting thing. Blockchain is, all my friends that know anything about this, it's very big, but it doesn't need Bitcoin. And J.P. Morgan, of course, came up with their own cryptocurrency.
Are you investing at all in blockchain?
Well, we probably are doing it indirectly through bank, but no, I wouldn't be the person to be a big leader in the blockchain. But Bitcoin is not unique in any way in its ability to work with it. And you can say, well, I can write a check for $1 million. And you can say, my God, that piece of paper is valuable. It isn't the piece of paper that's valuable. It isn't the pen with which I wrote it that's valuable. It's the fact that I've got $1 million deposited someplace. But the fact that something enters into the process that itself has utility, unless it's key to the utility, it's not going to have special value.
Can I ask you about something that just crossed?
Yeah.
There's Kraft Heinz filing. It has not filed its 2018 Form 10-K with the SEC. It has not released its financial statement for the first quarter to Berkshire. It's from your filing actually this morning. Berkshire doesn't have the financial information?
That's correct.
What happened?
And we did publish at 7 o'clock, I think, Midwest, our 10Q and our press release. And our press release said that we have not received. We account for, we account for Kraft on the so-called equity method, so we pick up our share of their earnings. And we don't have a figure for their earnings, and they can't put out a figure for their earnings currently. So we're putting it in at zero. I'm going to explain that in the start of the report, because we don't have a figure for them.
But given the chance to do this all over, would you invest in Kraft
I think
again?
that's kind of important.
Sure, it is important.
I mean, are you surprised as a major shareholder to not have those numbers at this point?
Well, I'm not surprised now because I knew in the last few weeks it could be coming. I mean, they have not been able to file their 10K, which was due around March 1st, although I think maybe you can get it out March 10th or something like that. Mm-hmm. And since they haven't filed that, they can't file subsequent 10Qs that report the quarterly earnings. And until their 10K is accepted, we will wait to get the earnings for the quarter.
How unusual is that?
It's pretty unusual, and it means we put in zero for the earnings, even though we received $130 million in dividends, but we don't count that in the earnings because it's an equity type investment. Normally you put in dividends you receive from other investments. We own over 20% of Kraft Heinz, so we account for it under the so-called equity method. And that means that we count the earnings, not the dividends. And we don't have the earnings. We have the dividends, but we don't have the earnings. And we'll get them at some point. But we have, if you read our press release, you'll see that we say that we don't have the earnings to put in there. So.
Given the chance, would you invest and do it all over again in Kraft the way you did?
I would invest. Well, there's a lot. In hindsight, I can tell you 50 things I wouldn't do. But the Heinz has worked out quite well, and
would be 57 things.
And we paid too much for Kraft.
But just back to this, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I was
sure.
trying to read it on the wires.
Yeah, it's a little tricky. Yeah.
What leads to them not being able to?
That means that the auditor hasn't, which is Price Waterhouse in this case, the auditor hasn't signed off on the 10K.
Because they don't agree with the numbers?
Well, not necessarily. I don't know why they. I mean, they'd have to explain why they haven't signed off, but they haven't signed off. And if you can't file the 10K, then you can't come up with quarterly numbers subsequently until they have a 10K that's accepted.
So there's a dispute between the auditor and the company?
There's something going on.
Can I ask you about the Federal Reserve really quickly? Donald Trump just recently urged the Fed last week to cut rates by around 1%, saying the economy would go off like a rocket ship. Yet we have 3.2 GDP. We have a very solid jobs labor market at the moment. What do you think of that idea that the president puts forth as, hey, cut 1%?
Well, presidents from time, well, the Fed, I guess, wasn't established till about 1911 or something like that, but presidents have always wanted to, particularly with election years coming up. So that's not unusual. In fact, Paul Volcker has a terrific book out that came out 6 months ago or so, and he describes the meeting with Reagan and with Jim Baker, and it was suggested to Volcker that it would be a good idea not to raise rates between then and election, and Volcker didn't say anything. He just stood up and walked out of the room. So that is the proper relationship between the Fed and the administration.
Do we need a rate cut?
Pardon me?
Do we need a rate cut?
We'll find out. But I would say that in my view, there's nobody better than Jay Powell to be running the Fed.
Can you share with us
You mentioned earlier the entertainment way kind of change over time. So how do you see the 5G might change the way people entertain, or maybe could affect more, let's say, local news business?
There are so many people who are smarter about that than I am. But we have all over the world, and I would say particularly in the United States and China, but all over the world, we have extraordinarily intelligent people working on ways to make all kinds of entertainment, communications, and everything be better next year than it is this year. That's going to be never ending. And 5G is obviously an important development in that respect. But there'll be something beyond. I mean, that's the genius of a market system. And socialism wouldn't have produced that.
But you still see the value of those local newspapers.
Well, I'll probably discuss that more fully at the annual meeting.
Warren, are you going to take a walk on the floor?
I think
a
I
little
better
bit?
take a walk.
Okay.
What I really need is a Coke, but that's okay.
He needs a Coke. Can we get him a Coke?
We will start walking, and if you will, just give me a little room. And
Mr. Buffett, can you share with us the
okay.
can you share with us the view on U.S.
I'll wait till we get moving here.
Which way would you like to go?
We're going to go right down this way. I hear there's a rump movement down here to get Charlie elected chairman. Yes, I have to stamp it
All right,
out.
let's clear a little path here, guys.
Okay, we'll just move back a little bit here.
So you've had Coke so far. Now what? Oh, my goodness.
Okay. I've got 4 guards and 3 networks protecting me.
We saw something interesting at a House Financial Services Committee hearing a few weeks ago. I don't know if you saw it, but Representative Al Green asked all of the bank CEOs if their successor would be a woman or minority.
Right.
No one raised their hand.
I saw that.
What do you make of that?
Well, I assume that's the situation. I think it's several of those banks. There are candidates that I wouldn't be surprised the CEO, women that are at some point. But
the next week, J.P. Morgan makes moves that look like they could be.
You will see women be CEOs of very important banks. I mean,
soon.
I don't know.
Walk back, please.
I don't know. But if. Yeah, I would say, I mean, you do have a certain order to an extent in most places, and there certainly are women now in positions are one step away, but usually there's maybe 4 people one step away at any given time.
Tracy,
but it'll happen, and it won't. There's no fundamental reason in the world why women wouldn't be just as good at banking as men.
And I guess I ask because some people think, theorize, and that perhaps the banks wouldn't have gotten into such a deep financial crisis if more were led by women, or social media companies wouldn't be facing what they're facing. Kara Swisher says Facebook, Twitter, etc. wouldn't be where they are now in the crisis that they face if more women were in charge. Anything to that?
I don't see any way to test that one. Yeah,
Warren,
I mean, any more than I think guys from Omaha ought to be in charge of everything.
Warren, Tracy Britt Cool is a rising star at Berkshire. Tracy Britt Cool.
Oh, of course, she's running Pepper Chef.
I'm very interested to know the leadership position that you eventually foresee for very successful and smart women like her. We've spoken to her on Fox Business.
Well, women, we've got a number of smart women running various, but Fruit of the Loom, which will probably have the highest sales today of any of us, run by a woman who it was a very surprise. She jumped over a number of men actually when we had a sudden death at the CEO position. So she would have been regarded internally as a 50-to-1 shot or something of the sort. But she's very, very, very good. And Mary Reinhardt is running Johns Manville, and they think, well, building materials, that's a guy's game and all. But there aren't any guys' games, and so and banking. Well, there have been certainly a fair number of women on the Federal Reserve, and there'll be more. And the chairman, after the 19th Amendment was passed, it was what, 1920 to whenever Sandra Day O'Connor came, before she was Chief Justice. I think there were 33 or so justices appointed there. The odds were 8 million to 1 against that being by chance. So sometimes things change very slowly. I would feel they were, I would feel that way, but they have changed some, and they're going to change more.
Speaking of odds,
should we walk?
We can walk.
Speaking, got the 3 top. They're all weapons.
Well, there you go. And I'm actually asking about succession because people look to you as a teacher, and I'm curious, what have you learned from Greg, Ajit, Ted, and Todd?
I learned from all of them. I mean, but by far the person I learned the most from is Charlie. Charlie has. At his 95th birthday, I said, Charlie has made me a better person than I otherwise would be, and he is a better person. And there's very few people that do that for you in life, and you're very lucky if you find one. And he's been doing it for 60 years, and he continues to this day. Not by preaching to me, but it's like my dad.
What's your best investment last year?
And if you run into people like that, cherish them.
I was going to ask you about odds. You run the odds all the time. You had liked Mike Bloomberg, certainly, if he were to run. He is not running.
Him.
Yeah, you would have supported him. He is not running. However, another billionaire businessman is Howard Schultz, who says he's run the numbers and he can get to 270 electoral votes as an independent. You run numbers all the time. Can he get to 270 electoral votes?
It's extraordinarily unlikely, but that isn't a reflection of him. It's a reflection of the electoral system and the political system in the country. No, it's really tough.
Would he be a spoiler then if he ran as an independent?
Well, if you run as an independent, you're going to take, between the two major parties, you're going to take more votes away from the people that more closely agree, the party that more closely agrees with you. So you, by definition, probably are going to hurt the one that you would vote for if you were voting by yourself. It's by nature that if you lean to the left, you're going to take people away from Democrats. If you lean to the right, you're going to take it away from Republicans. And
Biden, of course, is 76 years old. You're 88 and still going strong. And you have said, though, succession at your company, age is a factor. Do you think age is a factor when running for president? And what do you think of Biden jumping in the race?
It certainly can be. I mean, obviously, the older you get, the more likely you are to have something happen to you. I mean, Biden appears to me, 76 is a kid to me.
Many young people want to work for Warren Buffett, so what kind of people can join in maybe that 20-something?
We hire one person about every 10 or 20 years, so the best thing they need is patience. That's the main quality.
Buffett, you like hamburgers. We just
Yeah.
had this IPO of Beyond Meat, and it's a meatless burger. So what do you make of all these plant-based protein burger companies?
A meatless burger company's going to have a hard time selling me anything. I'm looking for one that's even meatier.
Who gets credit for this economy?
The American people, American system. Yeah. And that's true whether Republican or Democrats in there. I mean, as I point out in the annual report, I've invested under 7 Republicans, 7 Democrats.
Yeah.
And, we had that interview, 2 days after the election? And,
Yes.
and all the Democrats were saying, pulling out their hair and saying, how to sell everything. And it didn't make any difference. We were buying the same thing on Thursday we were on Monday.
Although you remember what you told me 2 days after the 2016 election, your biggest concern was nukes, nuclear
Well, it still
weapons.
is.
Nuclear weapons.
Still
That's
is.
still your biggest concern?
Oh, by far. Yeah, there's nothing compares with it.
Well, the North Koreans tested a missile last night.
Yeah, right. Yeah, well, and let's say that report that came out of Hawaii, it happened during market hours. I mean, every day we're rolling the dice.
Real slow.
And now you can add cyber. It used to be
So your list of concerns, it's nuclear weapons, 1, cybersecurity, 2.
It's weapons of mass destruction. If you ask me to wager, well, who knows with cyber, but the thing I would probably worry about the most, if I were just laying odds, would be biological. That it's easier to do,
Yeah.
But there are plenty of people that wish others ill in the world, and you don't want them in positions of power, but you don't even want them acting individually. We had somebody with anthrax right after 9/11, if you remember, and anthrax hasn't gone away. No, we have the most wonderful world we've ever had in the history of the planet, and that's the only real threat to it. We know how to make people more and more prosperous. We know how to make people more and more healthy. We know how to educate them better. That all is moving in the right direction.
You bought an Israeli company many years ago, Iskar, and
I wish I'd bought 2 of them.
well, obviously it's throwing off a lot of cash. It's done incredibly well. Looking at the Israeli situation, rockets coming in from Hamas constantly, are you concerned that that one bastion of democracy in the Middle East is constantly under attack?
The whole world is a tinderbox in terms of weapons of mass destruction, unfortunately. And we've been both vigilant and lucky. And I hope we stay both vigilant and lucky. And if you ask me one quality I want in a president, that would be to minimize that possibility. And
Is Donald Trump doing that, or do you feel that some of the things he said kind of inflame it?
If you're doing it, I shouldn't know about it, most of it. But what's some crazy person? Let's just assume there's a dictator of some country that has the capability, and his doctor tells him he's going to die in a month of cancer. Well, 1 out of 100 of those people may decide to take the world with us. We don't know which one of the 100, in those circumstances. But you do know with human behavior, or with anything, if enough occurrences happen, anything can happen. You can roll the dice. There were paradise out of the desert inn. 32 times in a row they came up heads, or they didn't crap out, and basically the odds on that are 4 billion to 1. But it happened, and it'll happen again. And we just hope that the nuclear dice don't.
Where would you like to walk so we can get you
Dairy
there?
We're
Queen's
heading
right
there.
here.
Yeah, we got to move ahead.
right.
Okay.
Moving forward, please. Be careful walking back.
At Berkshire, we always move ahead.
During times of financial stress, companies would often call you for that financial lifeline. Do you think in the future at Berkshire Hathaway, when your successor takes over, will they still get those phone calls? Will it mean the same thing? And what are you telling folks to expect in the future?
They'll get the calls.
Other deals quickly.
They'll get the calls.
Well, the Occidental call came to you, but it's in Greg Abel's area of energy. Did you speak with him during that short amount of time that you were putting together the deal to help Occidental buy Anadarko?
No, I didn't speak with anybody.
No one.
No, we just did it. That's the advantage Berkshire brings. I mean, they could come and they knew they had $10 billion when they left the office. And they knew that if there's no war clause, there's no nothing. I mean, and you can't get that from anybody else.
You don't need 30 people around a table having a meeting, etc.
Yeah, that's right.
You want a Dairy Queen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes speed counts. Yeah. And certainty counts. very much.
I would think so.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. There are so many people now who are lined up to take different portions of the role. A single guy, you, and of course Charlie, have held for so many years. Todd and Ted run the big stock portfolio. You've got Greg and Ajit as the vice chairs. That's already 4 people. Howard, your son, will be executive chairman. I mean, now it's 6 people or so replacing you.
In 2008, in September, I saw Constellation going across the tape down 10 points because they were having a major problem. And at the same time, Dave Sokol and Greg Abel saw it. They were on a plane that afternoon to Baltimore. And we made a deal. I mean, and I didn't go with them. You know. No. That's one thing you don't have to worry about at Berkshire. Speed and certainty will be that'll be our competitive advantage.
Does Angie and Greg work as Warren and Charlie, or different kind of style?
Pardon me now?
Does Angie and Greg work as Warren and Charlie, or
Ajit
different?
and Greg.
Oh, no, well, not exactly, but they work extraordinarily well. I mean, nobody's exactly the same personalities, but they have the same values, the same culture, the same brains, you know. And but they actually are working in 2 separate areas now.
But they commute with each other, or they make
No, they
different-
commute with me. Yeah. I got to keep myself in there somehow. I mean,
You're running this race against
I
Charlie
may
for.
only be a carrier pigeon, but
You're running this race against Charlie for chairmanship.
yeah. Well,
Come on, Warren.
That's serious.
That's very serious, I'm sure.
I mean, I thought he was always going to wait his turn, but he's got. I mean, it's what happens with those kind of guys. I mean, they just get. They want to take over.
Well, how should shareholders differentiate who has the better record between the two of you?
Charlie has a better record, but keep it quiet. Turn the microphone off. Yeah.
What are the 5 things that make you most hopeful about America as we stand here this morning on a beautiful Omaha day?
Well, the fact that we found the secret sauce in 1776. It was imperfect. We said all men are created equal, and then we proceeded to shut women out, and we called blacks 3/5 of a person. And all. I mean, it was an aspirational document, but we meet those aspirations as we go along. And the luckiest person who's been born in the history of the world is the baby being born in America today. Absolutely.
All right.
And the second luckiest will be one who gets over to Dairy Queen.
That's what I think. I see Dairy Queen, but it's a ways up
Oh,
here.
okay.
Up.
Oh, great. Here we are. Help is on the way. It's just like a St. Bernard in the Swiss Alps.
How's it taste?
It tastes so good. So good.
What do you think of the orange vanilla flavor? Have you tried that?
I've tried that. I think it's the best diet. But I don't drink diets.
Charlie does, doesn't he, sometimes?
Yeah, he does. He does. Yeah. Well, he has more to worry about.
Coke's earnings looked a little bit better because of Coke Zero.
Coke Zero has really gained share just, quarter after quarter. Yeah. That was it's interesting that diet for a time kept gaining share, and then it fell off some, and now Coke without sugar, doing very well all around the world.
Want to go that way?
Yeah, let's sort of edge toward.
Okay.
Step back carefully, people.
Warren, interested in your thoughts on Apple. Obviously, you're a big fan.
Tim Cook will be here today.
Oh, good. So Tim Cook will be here today. Big fan of Apple, investor in Apple. What tells you that Apple won't be disrupted in the way that IBM, et cetera, was? Is there something different?
You never can be certain, but I think it's an incredible product in management, and I like it very much. And we own 5 and a fraction % of it. And if we don't do anything, in a few years we'll own 6% or more without spending a dime. I like
Will
that.
you spend more also?
That's
on
hard
Apple?
to tell. Depends on the price, but we could, but not now.
You mentioned that you want to try the iPhone 10 last year. Any new product you'll be interested in Apple?
I'm big on the iPad. I use that a lot. Oh yeah, I use that a lot.
Which version?
Well, Who knows?
Well, Tim Cook said he wanted to help you with your tech, so has he come and helped you with that?
I've had a lot of offers of help until they see me and then they decide I'm sort of hopeless.
I was talking to Susie and Howard and Peter, and I said, did you ever ask their advice on anything? And they said, setting the VCR, figuring out the voicemail on the cell phones and all of that.
I'd be helpless without them. It's amazing what I can get away with by looking helpless.
We are almost there. I see a dilly bar in your future.
Oh, actually, it's an orange. They've got 17,000
Oh, yes,
dilly bars. They got 17,000 dilly bars, and they've got 7,000 blizzards. And then I think they may have 5,000 of this. The
Here
orange.
this weekend.
Yeah,
You need to move out.
Yeah, and they'll get rid of all of them. Move.
They're obviously selling a lot of dilly bars and Coca-Colas
Yeah.
and whatnot. How important is Berkshire Hathaway's annual shareholder meeting to just the businesses here that you all own?
Well, I think over 600 people come from those businesses. They give up a weekend. They work very, very, very hard setting up and doing all that. And I was with them yesterday, and and every one of them was smiling. I mean, I think it's part of. I think it's part of them feeling that being part of Berkshire is something special.
Reach back to that first annual shareholder meeting where 2 people showed up.
It was like a long time ago, but.
We can keep going.
Oh, okay. Here we
2
go.
people. Yet you talked about your theory about investing. Has that changed at all? The way
No.
you think about value
That's the
investing?
basic way. It isn't. Yeah, all investing is value investing. I mean, people keep trying to say value or growth. That is, it's ridiculous. Actually, I mean, when we buy Apple versus buying banks versus anything else, it's all value investing.
You know what? We're getting close to the pots. Maybe we should move to the left here. Let's just go to the left here a little bit.
That way? That way a little?
So tell me, do you think that as we walk past Dairy Queen, you've got Kraft, there are numerous sanctions and tariffs on food right now, on different commodities. Tariffs, what is your thought on them?
Well, by and large, the country has been better and continues to be better because of free trade. But I'll forget it. I got a choice of looking at them or looking at you. I prefer to look at them.
The China and tariffs.
The trade benefits everybody generally and hurts people specifically. And that is something I think the president, as an educator-in-chief, well, any president, has an obligation to explain, and then I think Congress has an obligation to take care of the people that are roadkill. Investors can get killed by it, but they can diversify. But a worker in a textile mill can't diversify. And, they are, if you're 50 years old and all you've done is make shoes in Maine, you become roadkill. It's good for 330 million people and in ways they don't see and don't get advertised. And it's bad for thousands of people who don't have another occupation or about beyond the age perhaps where they can retrain. They don't want to move. And we can take care of that. We should do what's in the common good, but we shouldn't leave behind those are hurt by doing things in the common good.
But to the business aspect of it, you're holding an aluminum can. You've got that.
I'm going to take the orange.
Bring it back.
The orange.
All right, I'll be back.
You're holding a Coca-Cola can made of, obviously, aluminum.
Sure.
You've got a company that deals in steel, an aftermarket steel. Let's talk about... He's got to do the photo op here. But let's talk about the steel tariffs. It's been about a year and several months. How do you see them playing out as it pertains to Berkshire companies?
Well, we're affected by the tariffs now in various ways. But, we've been affected by tariffs in the past and we'll be affected by tariffs in the future. But it does change things. And overall, the world will be better, and the United States will be better with something close to free trade. You certainly don't want it in your military equipment or anything like that. But if you, generally speaking, we are much better off because we buy our bananas from Central America and don't try and grow them ourselves. Just imagine if you had 50 states and each state, some states could do some things better than others and they erected tariff walls between themselves and fought retaliatory things. Our country would go no place.
This is Taro from Dairy
Hi.
Queen.
How are
Oh, you're going to
you?
present me with this.
I am going to give it to you, but can I shake your hand first?
Pardon me? Oh, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, for that I'll shake both hands. I mean, yeah.
You want me to hold your
Hold
coat?
this one.
Yeah, here we go.
This is her first year?
This is my first year
Terrific.
attending. I am so happy to meet you. This
Yeah.
is amazing.
Well, the headquarters are up where she comes from.
Yeah, I said that. I asked her if she's
Did
from
you grow up on
Minnesota.
Dairy Queen?
Of course I
Oh,
did.
okay.
Every summer
Okay.
in Minneapolis and in Walker, Minnesota, where our cabin is.
You get the next question.
Would you like to ask Warren Buffett a question? I'll hand my question to you.
Oh my goodness. So Warren, what are you going to do when you retire?
You just issued the banned word. But we'll excuse it.
All right.
No, what I retired. In the sense of doing any work is something that you do that you'd rather be doing something else.
That's true.
I'll never retire.
You know,
No.
See, I
Yeah.
thought so. Somebody
Yeah.
said you might. I said, I
No,
don't think
no,
so.
I never. No.
Never.
No.
That's good.
No.
Good for you.
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
As long as you
Will
care.
Charlie retire, do you think?
And this keeps me so healthy. Look, I'm 88 and I eat like this all the time.
I'm going to have to start eating those.
Don't do it.
You just got your Dairy Queen. When you look at Berkshire Hathaway, you have a whole gamut of companies that really represent the economy. Where are you finding the bright spots? What are you really optimistic
Oh,
on
the
right
economy is
now?
generally good, but we don't worry about that. I mean, I don't. If you told me the economy was going to, or you know, the chairman of the Fed or somebody told me that the economy is going to get worse a year from now, would I sell businesses or not? No, we just keep going. We do not predict the economy. We do predict it over a long period of years. We think America's going to do wonderfully, but I have no idea, and I don't really care. I mean, I care in the sense I want the country to do well, but I don't care in terms of whether I invest or not.
Do you care about the massive deficit we're facing right now?
Well, I'll probably talk, but that takes a longer answer. Yeah.
Good question.
Are you
though.
worried,
I will
though?
talk
Do
about it.
Republicans
Are you
care
worried?
anymore about debt and deficits?
Yeah. I'd rather answer that with a long answer.
right.
Yeah. It's an important question, which is why it takes a little longer answer.
Do you see any bubbles forming? I'm so interested always in sort of that. Sorry, can you just put that down? Thank you. Because we got our guy right behind us.
Pardon me?
Can I take a picture with you?
Well, I don't want to encourage too many
Okay.
pictures, so
Do you see, Warren, any bubbles forming in the
you
economy?
never see them till it's too late. That's why they're bubbles.
Yeah.
Oh, that's why they are bubbles.
One